The Trump administration is looking to greenlight a consequential drilling project in Alaska before the Biden administration takes over. Oil and gas firms are bidding on the chance to secure drilling rights in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is home to thousands of native animals.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge has been in danger for many years, and on January 6th, there will be a bid to begin selling land from the coastal refuge to oil corporations, putting the wildlife and native tribes in the area in extreme danger. There is very limited time to take action.
Right now, it is a very critical time. So we had been fighting oil and gas development in the Arctic Refuge for years. Those lands have been under attack for so long, but our people have been advocating for so long to keep it out of the Arctic Refuge. And I'm the fourth generation fighting this. No one was really allowed to do anything to those lands, kind of open it up or anything. But the Trump administration opened up our sacred lands to the oil and gas industry.
We can't spend too much time talking about drilling in the Arctic, right? But we're opening it up.
3 years ago, Trump passed the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which included a controversial provision which opened up the coastal plains of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil, gas leasing, and development.
What changed in 2017 was it was a rider on the Tax Act. Basically, it was slipped in kind of covertly. Unfortunately, there was so much pressure, of course, to pass that.
So we won't do the whole thing, but this is basically what it is.
It just went on through. I think over 50% of Alaskan residents were pro-drilling. They saw it as an opportunity to boost their economy and boost an industry that they heavily rely upon.
There was a provision in the tax bill to require leasing of the 1002 area, of the coastal plain area. That was put into the tax bill as a way to make money for the nation. So a bunch of people were pissed off about that, about how that was done. Like, it wasn't a vote, it wasn't a national vote, like, should we open the refuge for development or not? It was like, should we make the checks and balances work for the government? And by the way, we'll slip this in. They will have accomplished something that brings a bunch of money to the state and to those villages. And that is awesome. That's really valuable. But it's also very short term. It's like we get this pulse of 10, 20, 30, 100 years of income. What's the impact from that in 200 years?
The Trump administration announced on December 7th that the oil and gas lease sale would occur on January 6th of 2021. On that day, approximately 2/3 of the 1.6 million acre coastal plain will be put up for sale to industry bidders. How will this affect Alaska?
So for my people, not a lot of people know this, but we have really rural villages in Alaska, especially our Miigwechin people. We are caribou people. The main reason why we've been fighting this is because of not only are they our sacred lands, the Arctic Refuge is the birthing grounds for the porcupine caribou herd.
The big problem is that once you start drilling in a place and open it up for development, then that opens up the floodgates. It's not so much the drilling itself that's the problem. The big problem is that then you have to build roads. Once you start building roads into a place, then pretty soon you've got all kinds of other infrastructure going in behind it. When that human infrastructure comes in, like a road, what happens is the caribou hit that road and they just say, oh, well, we'll just all kind of migrate. We'll just slowly go this way along the road and we'll just eat and munch and eat and munch. Eventually the road will disappear and then we'll just keep going. And so what ends up happening is that you end up destroying the migration routes of these caribou, and essentially the caribou get stuck.
We made a promise, a mutual promise to the land and the animals, saying, we'll protect you, and they provide, we protect. It's extremely expensive traveling back and forth from the village to the city, trying to like stock up on other foods. So that's why a lot of our people are really having a hard time, not only during COVID, but because of climate change, because it's affecting our hunting seasons, our fishing seasons, how we're not getting as much fish because we rely on these so much.
In that area, it costs an average of $13 just for a gallon of milk. Therefore, you can't just go shopping. Hence why this issue is considered a human right violation. In August, the United Nations took extraordinary measures to call for an investigation into the United States regarding violations of the Gwich'in people's human rights from proposed oil and gas development. After the government accelerated the leasing process, the UN submitted a rare follow-up inquiry, asking for further precautionary measures given the severity and urgency of the situation. Drilling in the Arctic will drastically impact the Gwich'in people and the way they live their lives. Their fish would be swimming through acid, their birds would be starving out of the sky, and their caribou would be in extreme danger.
The consequences would be grave for our communities. The Gwich'in people completely depend on the caribou for our food security, for our way of life, culture. The drilling impacting the caribou's birthing grounds would just devastate the herd and thereby devastate our people. We are very concerned, and our people have fought this for multiple generations now. And so we're going to continue to fight because of the consequences that we would face as a result of this drilling.
Let's take a look at the history of the National Wildlife Refuge. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge was established by President Eisenhower in 1960 to be protected for its unique beauty. In 1988, the Gwich'in people gathered to establish the Gwich'in Steering Committee in order to protect this refuge from President Reagan, who was at the time trying to open it for drilling. Remember, that was in 1988. It had been 32 years. As history repeats itself, the Trump administration is planning to sell the leases for the refuge for development on January 6th. This would make it hard for anyone, even President-elect Biden, to stop the drilling since the land would already have been sold. The government has been trying to drill in Alaska for a very long time. And even if this current attempt fails, they'll try again and again. Trump is just a symptom, a figurehead. He is not the underlying disease.
One of the critical moments of this was during ANILCA, so the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act, and that was when those 1002 lands were kind of set aside from the rest of the lands that were getting these federal protections. But that specific land, that debated land, that land was not designated under those same protections.
Thankfully, there is fierce opposition to the drilling in Alaska. On December 15th, the Gwich'in Steering Committee and 12 allied groups filed a motion in the U.S. District Court requesting a preliminary injunction to stop the Bureau of Land Management from issuing any leases sold in the January 6th sale of the coastal plain. There are currently 4 lawsuits fighting against drilling. Polling has revealed that 67% of registered voters oppose drilling in the Arctic Refuge. More than 300 businesses from across the country have called out oil and gas corporations and other businesses that support drilling activities to not violate the refuge's biological heart, the coastal plain, and to listen to the will of the people.
Not only is this issue like a human rights issue to our people, but it is affecting our food security.
The Gwich'in Steering Committee has been fighting this since the 1980s.
We still greatly depend on our ways of life to stay alive out in the villages.
I would say the most important thing if you're going to support Alaska Natives is to actually just get to know a Native person that lives in your own community. the real people with real concerns. It's really difficult to go outside your own friend group, but that's the most important thing, I think, ultimately, is to actually get to know some people.
So, what can we do to help? Continue to raise awareness. Make sure people understand what is at stake on January 6th, and make your voices heard. Donate and support organizations like the Wilderness Society, Natural Resources Defense Council, the Gwich'in Steering Committee, Earth Justice, and more.
All of us have come from a place where at one point we were living on a piece of land. All those places are protected and are sacred today, are special to us because Indigenous people preserved them for thousands of years.
You know, we just ask that everyone stand in solidarity with us. January 6th is when the lease sales will happen. And so we're asking for people around the world to stand with us and do a COVID-safe banner drop in any location where you're at. So if you go to defendthesacredak.org, you can see the 30 days of action, and we're in the 4th week of those 30 days of action. Yeah, so just check out that toolkit, and there are a lot of different ways that that anyone can get involved. And I just really appreciate you also amplifying this story through your network.